So hello everybody. Today we are going to talk about my Jemison, which was a chemical engineering. She was one of the first African. She was the first African American woman to have landed on the moon, and we have selected her because of her diverse range of experiences that made her so particular and so iconic for the American population. So I will start with the timeline and I will sum up a little bit of the biography of my Jemison, and in later slides my teammates will start developing more these parts of her life. As we know, a degree in chemical engineering equips its graduates with a skill set that allows for diverse career opportunities across many fields. In 1977, my Jemison graduated from Stanford University with a bachelor degree in chemical engineering. With her degree, Jemison went on to medical school, where she became a doctor in the Peace Corps. In 1987, Maya Jemison was accepted to join NASA in their own astronaut program. After her training, Jemison made her first flight as a crew member on the Space Shuttle Endeavour STS-47 mission. During her 8 days in space, Maya Jemison became famous for being the first African American woman in space. With her background in chemical engineering and medicine, Jemison's role was to conduct research experiments on bone cells, tadpole development for bags, along with 44 other process-based experiments. After her time with NASA, Jemison went on to become professor and collaborate with Bayer, a large employer of chemical engineering, to promote teaching agricultural science to kids. Jemison also was a guest star, as a fun fact, was a guest star on season 6, episode 24 on Star Trek, The Next Generation. From his start in chemical engineering, Maya Jemison was able to achieve remarkable accomplishments and promote learning to younger, diverse groups. And now I will let my other teammate proceed.
Maya Jemison was born October 17, 1956, and this was early enough for her to see the Apollo missions. She graduated high school in Chicago in 1973 and went on to Stanford University to study a dual degree in chemical engineering and Afro-American studies. She graduated in 1977. Her senior year in college, she was torn between her two top interests of dancing and medicine. So she asked her mom, "What should I do?" And her mom told her this: "You can always dance if you're a doctor, but you can't doctor if you're a dancer." With that, she went on to go to Cornell University to study for an MD and graduating in 1981. However, to this day, she still maintains a dance studio in her own home.
Thank you, Jamin, for sharing all that information about Mae Jemison's academic life. Like Jamin recently shared, Mae Jemison graduated from the University of Stanford with the Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering. However, her interests have always aligned within the biomedical engineering field. During the 1970s and early 80s, around when the same around time that Mae Jemison went to school, biomedical engineering was a new field. It was still emerging and hadn't been fully developed into the curriculum of most universities. Therefore, they didn't offer it as a major at Stanford University. Mae Jemison chose chemical engineering since her interests were within the human body and the circulatory system. And since chemical engineering deals with a lot of fluids and thermal systems, as well as transport, she decided that would be the best major for her to pursue. Mae Jemison has a passion for biomedical engineering, and with a degree in chemical engineering, a more classical engineering major, She decided that she could follow up her interests in biomedical engineering by pursuing a master's degree or furthering her education in a professional school. And that is exactly what she did. Mae Jemison graduated with a Doctor of Medicine from Cornell University, and her choice to pursue medicine came from an encounter with the doctor she met when she was ill. He told her this: "You know, if you want to do biomedical engineering and you want to run your own projects, then it would be really great for you to have an MD, because sometimes doctors are difficult to get along with if you don't have a medical degree." Another encounter with an electrical engineer who served as her mentor that also pursued a doctor of medicine described to her the importance of an MD and the opportunities it would bring to gain a lot of knowledge about the human body and the role various therapies come into play when developing medical interventions for diseases. He told her the reason he chose to go to medical school was because while you're doing biomedical engineering, that is designing things to work in the body, to monitor the body, replacement parts and things like that, it's important to understand what therapeutic environment they're going to operate in. That is, what is the patient like? How do people grow from day to day? You can't just build this little piece of equipment and then not figure out whether it's going to be useful to a person. Will the person actually use it? How is it going to affect their lifestyle? So being in medicine was very important to me, and that's how I ended up going to medical school. After Mae Jemison left NASA, she then created a biotech startup that is called Biosentient Corporation. This startup is a medical devices company that focuses on improving health and human performance. The Biosentient Corporation helps develop devices to measure vital signs of the wearer. While working with the Biosentient Corporation, she obtained a license to commercialize NASA's patented autogenic feedback training exercise, or the AFTE. This is an innovative exercise developed by NASA to help combat motion sickness that astronauts experience during spaceflight. The technique, which was originally developed by Dr. Patricia Cowings of NASA's AMES Research Center in California, is a patented combination of biofeedback and autogenic therapy that allows individuals to eliminate or minimize their unwanted physical responses to outside stimuli by controlling their autogenic nervous systems. The autogenic nervous system is responsible for controlling and regulating involuntary bodily functions such as breathing, heartbeat, or sweating. Biosentient has created a seamless system that includes a garment that a person can wear, which measures and wirelessly transfers physiological data in real time onto a wrist display and to a computer station that a trainer can use to capture data and therefore teach the person regulation techniques to control their physiology.
In the early 1980s, Mae Jemison worked for Peace Corps as a physician. She was treating volunteers on the program in West Africa. She recalls a specific memorable patient. In this case, a volunteer was diagnosed with malaria. After standard treatment with chloroquine, his condition did not improve, and Dr. Jemison thought instead it might be life-threatening meningitis. She thought a medical evacuation to Germany was in order, and this was definitely in the patient's best interest. However, this was an $80,000 choice, and the US Embassy personnel responsible for the paperwork in this process was reluctant to grant this order, because Dr. Jemison was a young physician and perhaps just overzealous. However, Dr. Jemison reminded the US Embassy personnel that she did not need his approval to order a medical evacuation, and so she did. Upon their arrival in Germany, Dr. Jemison had been awake with the patient for 56 hours continuously. In the end, it was not just a simple case of malaria, but the patient did survive. This is a fascinating story, just showing how Dr. Jemison has always kept what she has thought to be correct at the very top of her priorities, not letting other people kind of let her waver from that.
Inspired by the science fiction stories from her childhood, Dr. Jemison had always dreamt of going to space. Following her time with the Peace Corps and returning to the US, Dr. Jemison worked as a general practitioner while attending graduate engineering classes in Los Angeles. After noting a lack of representation during the Apollo missions and observing the historic flights of Sally Ride and Gwen Bluford, the first woman and African American in space, Dr. Jemison decided to achieve her childhood dream of touching the stars. Dr. Jemison would excel in the astronaut training program to become the first African American woman in space. Dr. Jemison first applied to the astronaut training program in 1986. Unfortunately, she was not selected to complete the program that year, but after reapplying in 1987, she was chosen out of a class of about 2,000 applicants to be a part of astronaut Group 12. Dr. Jemison performed launch support activities at Kennedy Space Center, conducted independent research, verified shuttle launch software, and participated in one spaceflight on mission STS-47 during her 6-year career with NASA. STS-47 was a cooperative endeavor with the National Space Development Agency of Japan and was the 50th mission of the Space Shuttle program. The mission lasted 7 days, 22 hours, and involved 44 experiments in the life and material science fields. As a science mission specialist, Dr. Jemison determined the equipment required in the shuttle Space Lab module and acted as the co-investigator for the 2 bone cell growth experiments conducted during the flight. After returning to Earth, Dr. Jemison decided to retire from NASA in March of 1993, only 4 months following the conclusion of STS-47. Dr. Jemison worked to develop her biotech startup, Biosentient, found a consulting firm, pursue work as a political activist, and teach as a professor at Dartmouth College during her retirement from NASA. Dr. Jemison never returned to work with NASA and has expressed regret leaving the program. Despite this, Dr. Mae Jemison's legacy as the first African American woman in space lives on as a symbol of excellence and empowerment.
Throughout her life, Mae Jemison became a role model for fellow African American women across the country. As a woman in STEM, Jemison understood the daily obstacles that women and minorities face in receiving education and in the workforce. To actively fight for change, Mae Jemison established the Dorothy Jemison Foundation, named after the woman who supported her in her youth, her mother. Through the Dorothy Jemison Foundation, a number of programs have been created, each with a different role in supporting the community. The Dorothy Jemison programs host week-long camps, speaker events, and mentorship for the youth. The 100-Year Starship is a program that wishes to provide human space travel across the solar system within the next 100 years. The Women of Color in Flight hosts speaker events for women and minorities in aviation. Expo Inspire offers a week-long camp that offers hands-on STEM activities to promote learning engagement for anyone of all ages. In addition to her role in establishing the Dorothy Jemison Foundation, Jemison also addressed diversity in STEM through her role as an educator. When a professor at Dartmouth College, Jemison researched education and engineering and hosted many workshops to address the issues. In 2019, Jemison spoke before the 116th Congress to address the underrepresentation of women and minorities in STEM. STEM diversity was not the only issue close to heart for Mae Jemison, though. Environmental awareness was promoted through her program Charlie's Gardens with the Dorothy Jemison Foundation. Charlie's Gardens is a program which teaches gardening while also providing an education of an environmentally sustainable world.
Dr. Mae Jemison is a woman who has achieved many things a lot of people can't fathom completing in their own lifetime. She is a dancer, an engineer, a doctor, and the first Black woman to go into space. A commonality throughout her life is found in this quote. The thing that I have done throughout my life is to do the best job I can and to be me. She always pursued her passions, and I think her life is a good example on how diverse chemical engineering really is, and how by pursuing your interests, it can take you to the path you want to be in, as well as how a chemical engineering degree equips its graduates with a skill set that allows for such diverse opportunities across many fields. So thank you again for listening to our presentation, and I hope it was helpful.